In this next video, we will be creating this cross piece here on the handle. You can see here that it runs in perpendicular to the screw and would be used to add a little bit extra grip if you were screwing this down. We will also be creating these two pins that go through and hold in the piece. So we'll have to look at some of the other drawings to get our widths for these, because these are not included in the main drawing, but we're going to create them as additional parts for this assembly. All right, well, let's start off with part number 7. And so this is that cross piece that we were looking at for the handle. So we're going to go to the front plane, and we're going to start a new sketch. Along this sketch, I want to put in 2 reference lines again. I'm going to put in a line here, and I'm going to put in a line here. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to draw one side of, basically 1/4 of this piece. So we're going to go with our line tool here. And we're going to start out over here on this edge. I'm going to draw over, up, across, and down. Okay? So we have that done. And now what we're going to do is we can add in some measurements right now, but first let me just do some stuff here where we're going to mirror this entity. So these 3 lines, so we want to have them selected. We can say mirror entity. Entity is to mirror. We can select these 3. Or 4, I guess. And then we're going to mirror them about this line right here. And you can see that makes a mirror on the other side of this line right here. And then we can say OK. All right, now let's go in and do some smart dimensions. How about? We want to say, we can look at the drawing from this line to this line. We are 95. This distance here is 5. Not 25, it should be 5. Sorry. 5. You can see that that automatically adjusts both sides. And then we know that this total diameter would be 10. So half of that is 5. And you see it lifted off the line. So one thing we're going to need to do here is we're going to have to make some adjustments, because we didn't draw this line quite long enough. And so it didn't associate this endpoint with being on the line. So let's just say OK here. What we can do is we can click on this point. Well, let's do a few things. We can click on this line and we can drag it longer. Let's drag it longer on this side. That helps us out to start with. All right, now we can click on this point here, push Shift, and click on this line. And you get some options here for what you want to be able to do. We could have it make it the midpoint. We don't want to do that. We want to make it coincidence, which will make it mean that this point is on that line. See, so it dropped it down and dropped it down on both sides. All right. And then finally, the distance that we need to determine is the width of this shaft. And so we can look at the drawing and we can see that the inner diameter is 6. So half of that's going to be 3. So I'm going to say smart dimensions again. Click on the shaft, click on the line. We can say that we want this to be 3. And there we go. Now we're fully defined there. Okay. What we don't have, though, is we could rotate this around, but it's not a closed feature yet. So we'll need to complete this. So we'll have to draw this final line here. There we go. Now we've got our feature here. And so now we can go to features, and we can say revolve boss base. And you can see that it already picked the line that it wants to revolve around because it's the one that makes sense to the computer, because you can't revolve. I mean, we could revolve it around this line, but it wouldn't make as much sense this way. We're revolving around there. You can give us that, so we can say okay. And there we go. We've got our final piece. Now, one thing we want to do is we want to change its color. So we'll go up here to color. And we'll make this final piece, we'll make it that orange color. Something like that. Looks fine. And then we want to save it. And we'll save it as part 7. Like before, I already had this saved. So. Okay, so now we're going to make these pins. And so the 2 pins are actually different diameters and they're different lengths. So if you can look here, and also, excuse my dog sneezing in the background. If you look here, we have the width of this green piece here, and then that holds the red cylinder in place. And then we have the width between these 2 yellow pieces here that holds this, that basically creates that pivot point. And so we'll have to pull those parts up on the drawing and look at them to determine what our width is going to be. All right, so the first pin we're going to make is the one that's going to go through this part 3 here. And it's going to be this pin that's in the back that holds the cylinder in place. So what we'll do is we want to look at that, and we see that it has a diameter of 6, and we can see that its width is going to be 54. So there's a few ways we can do this. Let's go with the top plane version. We'll do a sketch on the top plane. We can start from the origin here. We're going to draw ourselves a circle. All right, smart dimensions, go in here. I'm going to say we want to make this 6. All right, so now we have a circle that's a diameter of 6. We know that the height of that is going to be 54, so we can do extruded boss base, and we can make it 54. All right, so that gives us our pin. That's a pretty quick way to do this. It's actually one of the quicker ways to do this. And then let's make this pin look a little bit nicer. So let's give it some chamfers along the edges. So like if anybody's ever driven in a pin, you know that when you're driving it in, having the ends of those pins a little bit tapered, a lot of times makes that a little bit easier. So up here you can see that we have our fillet tool, and then if we do the drop down below that, we actually get the chamfer as well. And depending on how big your screen is and how spread out your toolbar is, your toolbar might look a little bit different. So you might have to search around for that fillet tool a little bit. The default here is a 45-degree angle, which we'll leave that alone, but it's going to be a 10mm chamfer. And knowing that the overall diameter is 6, we know that 10 really isn't going to work. So let's go with something a lot smaller. Let's start with 1 and see how 1 looks. And then we can click on this line here, and we can click on this line here because we want to chamfer both of them. We say okay. Actually, let's not say okay yet, because we can see our preview here, and I think that that's going to be a little too much. So let's go here and let's say 0.5 instead. And I think that looks a lot more realistic to what a tool chamfer would, or a chamfer would look like on a pin. And so there we go. And you can see then our edges are broken in a little bit. Now this piece isn't in the drawing. We can just leave it gray, or we can go up and we can give it a color. Let's make these pins purple. And right now you can see that we actually had the chamfer part selected, not the whole piece. So let's go in. You got to click on the rest of the piece to get the whole thing purple, and we can say okay. All right, and let's save this as a part 8, And then the next pin will be part 9. So once you've done the save on that, you'll go up and you'll say new, and we'll say new part. Okay, and we say okay. All right, so now we want to make the pin that goes through our part number 4. And we can see up here on the part number 4 that we have a diameter of 8 on the hole, and we have a width of 70. So let's draw this one slightly different than we did the previous pin, even though that method is probably the quickest and easiest way to do that. We're gonna mix it up a little bit, mainly just so that we can show some different skills and different tools here. So let's go to our front plane. We're gonna go to our sketch here. Let's make ourselves some reference lines. I find myself making these reference lines a lot when I'm drawing. Just because it's kind of convenient to have them in there. It gives you a place to lock stuff in. All right, and now we're going to do our line tool here. I'm going to draw out and back over. Push escape. All right, now let's mirror these entities. So we can go and we'll go mirror entities. We'll select the ones that we want. If you draw it down from this side, it only selects the things that are 100% within the box. If you pull up from the other side, it will select anything that's being touched. So we're gonna mirror these 3 lines. We're gonna mirror about this line. All right. We say okay. And you can see that gives us a closed feature. Let's go to our smart dimensions here. We can see that our total length is 70. So we drop down here and we can say this is going to be 70. And we can see that the diameter of that pin is 8. So half of that diameter is going to be 4. We go here. We can say this is 4. All right. So what we could do is we could just do a revolve boss base like we did with the others, and then we could go and use the chamfering tool at that stage. Instead, let's use the chamfering tool in our sketch, and then we'll do our revolve boss base. So our chamfering tool in the sketch here is up here in this corner. So we have our sketch fillet, and then we also, if we do the drop down, we have a sketch chamfer. All right, and so once again, default goes to 10. So let's make that 0.5. And then we'll go over here and we'll pick this corner. And it's gonna say that some of our sketch constraints will be lost, which is fine. We just say okay. And then we go over and we do the same thing over on this corner. All right, and there's a lot of information that's going on here. Basically, it's just showing that it's 0.5 if we drag this up from that corner, and 0.5 from the corner to the end of the chamfer. And so it looks like it's very clustered there, but that's just because of the size of the text. All right, so now we've got this done. We can click the green check mark, and now we can go to feature, and we can revolve our boss base. And it's going to say what axis of revolution do we want to revolve around. We're going to pick this line here, and you can see now that it revolved it around that line, and it created our second pin. All right, and so now we'll give this a color. Let's go with a dark navy blue. That looks pretty nice. We'll say okay, and we'll want to save this as a part 9. And that wraps up this this part of the build. We did the handle and we did 2 pins. So, all right, I'll see you next time.